Hey friends, welcome to Wednesday night. Glad to be here with you. We are finishing up Mark chapter 7, our study in the first part of that. So we're excited about that. A couple things that we're also excited about for Brookridge. No live next Wednesday. I have found that the best way to be able to do a good Valentine's Day dinner is to not do it on Valentine's Day because everybody else is doing that. So AJ and I are going to go out next Wednesday. We're going to extend Valentine's Day out an extra night. So I will not be here, but we will be back and better than ever the next Wednesday. So you'll be glad that you came tonight because I would think you might miss me a little bit next week. But the other thing that we have coming up next week is a week from Sunday. So Sunday, actually, I take that back. It's not a week from Sunday. It's February it is a week from Sunday. Sunday's the 12th. Wow. Okay. Sunday is the 12th of February. We've established that. My mom and I had a discussion about March and what day the 18th was, and I was convinced it was a Sunday, and it is not. It is the 18th is a Saturday. Anyway, days in February and March are the same. They line up together when it's not a leap year. So we know this Sunday is February 12th. The 19th, we are having our Brookridge family dinner. So we have a team of people. Hey, Helen. Helen and Mike are together. Hey, guys. Always glad to hang out with you. Hey, Megan. So family dinner. We have a team led by Nancy who have the ability to make delicious food, and they're going to make delicious food for us and our families and whoever we can bring and invite with us. So that's going to be at 4:00 on Sunday, February 19th. So be there. You don't have to bring anything. We are providing all the beverages and food that you could desire, and you just need to come. So there are not too many things I like more than seeing all my favorite people in the same room together. So I love these type of gatherings, and we'd like to see them happen more in the future. Pastor Brian Spicer, speaking of favorite people, I've had a little trouble with Facebook today, so I heard that his live might be canceled, which is very sad. Brian Spicer is a crowd pleaser in the Facebook world, but Facebook's trying to censor him apparently. So maybe you might have to wait and just watch his live next week. So Bay State Baptist, always 7:30 to 8:00 most Wednesdays. Brian Spicer's coming to speak the first Wednesday in May, so we're excited about that. And then he's going to join me on Wednesday night. So we have a lot of good things upcoming for this year. A lot of good times to hang out together. So again, for announcements, no live next Wednesday. If you come looking for me at 7:00, I will not be here. I will be enjoying delicious food somewhere else. And then Brookridge family dinner on Sunday, February 19th. And that's the deal. That's all I have for you for announcements. So remember that. No live next Wednesday. And then Brookridge family dinner. All right. Yeah, I'm not sure what's happening. We may have to we're working on a few things with the page. Those of you who follow Brookridge closely know that we've had a couple skippy issues with the stream. And so we may have to go, if you've had issues with the stream, you might have to go and reselect your notifications to make sure that when the page goes live, that you know it's going live. But we're going to worship this Sunday. We are excited about that. And we're streaming now. And we're going to jump into Mark chapter 7. So if you remember from last week, the first 23 verses of Mark chapter 7 are something that we aren't going to cover on Sunday. So after we get past this week, we're going to kind of jump over it the next week. And I didn't want you to miss out on this passage of scripture, but it's interesting because Jesus gets into a conversation with the religious leaders. And if you are familiar with the story of Jesus throughout the Gospels, Jesus had the most difficult time and most challenging issues with the people who were supposed to know God best and know God's word the best and supposed to have it all together, and they just didn't. So if you remember in Mark chapter 7, in the beginning of it, they came to Jesus and they were upset because the disciples weren't washing their hands enough. They just took this random thing, which we said last week, washing hands, very important. Somebody bought me this sign that I think is Fantastic. Wash your hands, say your prayers, because germs and Jesus are everywhere. Somebody knows me very well. Anyway, Pharisees were very upset that the disciples weren't washing their hands as many times as they should. And Jesus was like, I'll show you what he said to them after they were done complaining, and they basically called the disciples defiled. And we're like, Jesus, how can you let your guys that follow you? You guys are defiled. You're not okay. You're not holy. You're not like us. And Jesus' response to them was, you hypocrites, as it is written, so the people honor me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. He was quoting Isaiah there. And so Jesus was like, listen, he said, you make void the word of God by your traditions that you've handed down. He said, basically, you're taking God's word and you're taking the traditions of men. Nothing wrong with traditions, but when you combine them together and they start to combat with each other, you discard what God says and go with traditions, which is no good. And so we ended last week saying, yeah, Jesus was saying, yep, it's no good. He was saying, you guys are playing a religious game. You found a way to bend scripture to justify your own selfishness. That's what you're doing. And how God assesses that, Jesus was saying, it's worthless. It's offensive. It's hypocritical, right? Nobody wants to be called a hypocrite. You have a conversation with somebody else where they're like, you're a hypocrite. Either the conversation ends right there or it doesn't. Like that's tough to come back from. But Jesus is saying God doesn't like your little religious games. But then we turned it around right at the end, and I left you with this for the last week, that we do this. We play little religious games to justify our selfishness. And we're like, man, if we can just do this, we'll be okay before God. And the reality is we're not. I said last week that some people in other churches promise to serve people and help people. And then they're like, yeah, I get busy. I overcommitted. So I'm going to quit all my ministries because I have to be a good steward of my time and my family. I'm not saying your time and your family are not important, but when you use a word like stewardship, because it sounds Bible-y, well, yeah, I guess that's where you're being led. No, you took a position where you promised to be there for people and care for people and help people. And now you're blowing it off, and you're probably not cutting out the things that are taking up your time that you really want to be doing. So it's just selfishness. We talk a lot in church, buckle your seatbelts here. We talk a lot in church about sexual immorality, right? And the sanctity of marriage. And the Bible is very clear on that. But in a situation like this, like a guy will say, I know, no sex before marriage. But listen, my girlfriend and I love each other. And look, love is what matters. And what is marriage anyway? Right? It's just a ring in front of people. Like, who are they? What matters is what God thinks. And in my heart, we're married. So I'm going to marry her. And that's just a foregone conclusion. So I can think it's okay. And it's like, okay, so wait a second. You're saying you're free to have relations with her because you're married before God, because all that matters is love. Okay, well, forget the thing about honoring parents, like her parents and yours. Forget about the institution of marriage that God's ordained to be a picture of his church before the world. You're going to blow all that off, but you're doing this because God says it's okay. Don't make it sound spiritual. Like, just say, no, I just want to have sex with her, so I'm going to. And I don't want to obligate myself to marriage. I can't afford that. I'm not ready to make that type of lifelong commitment. So I got to find a way spiritually to say that it's okay. Again, we do this stuff all the time. We create this religious game to play. And what we do is we suit it to what we're good at, right? We set up our guidelines based on what we're good at. I remember when I got to college, and I've told you all this story before, like I was a pretty good kid. If you ask my mom, I was pretty well behaved. I got really good at following the rules because number one, I didn't like the consequences. And number two, it was just easier to do what everybody said I should do. But I linked that to how God saw me, like my spirituality. So I got good at following this set of rules. I get to college and I think that I'm great because I haven't done a lot of things that everybody else is doing. I've done a lot of things that other people haven't done. And that made me look good. My spirituality made me look good. But in my heart, I was selfish and I was judgmental. And when I came into contact with different people that had a different kind of spirituality that I wasn't as good at, it wrecked me and it put my spirituality in shambles. Maybe you've made busyness an excuse for not loving people that don't know Jesus. Some people will study theology, but the reality is they don't love people and they don't say nice things to people. I don't know what it is for you, but I think if we're honest with ourselves, we'd say, you know what, in this area of my life, I'm just playing games. God's heart for us is to love him and to love people. And we've created a way to do religion or spirituality that makes me look good and makes me sleep at night. But Jesus is looking at that and saying, I don't like it. I don't like it at all. And it's empty. And it's a devastating critique that he gives to these Pharisees and to us when we really take a good look. This gets better. But in verse 14, it gets worse. It says, he called the people to him again and said to them, hear me, all of you, and understand. So he's done with the Pharisees at this point. And he says, hey, I want all of you to hear this. And he gathers everybody in and he utters one of these cryptic statements that we've talked about in Mark. He says, there's nothing outside a person that by going into him can defile him. But the things that come out of a person are what defile him. He's like, everybody, listen, it's not what goes in, it's what comes out. Take it easy. And then he leaves. That's the whole sermon. Always gets worse before it gets better. I promise you this gets better. And so his disciples, so he drops the sermon and his disciples, like the guys who want to have a heart that pleases God, the guys who want to honor God, they walk into the house with them and they move toward him and they're like, hey, Jesus, so remember earlier the whole what goes in, what goes out? I have no idea what you're talking about. And he looks at them and he says in verse 18, then are you also without understanding? Do you not see that whatever goes into a person from outside cannot defile him, since it enters not his heart, but his stomach and is expelled? The English Standard Version is very polite about this. They use the word expelled, but it literally means it goes into the toilet. Enters not his heart, but his stomach, goes into the toilet. So he looks at these guys and he's like, look, the Pharisees have determined an external way of doing religion that makes them look okay, but it has nothing to do with their heart. And he says, hey, this food thing, your food goes in your mouth through your stomach into the toilet. He says, that doesn't matter because it doesn't touch your heart. He says, the real problem isn't that you're not doing enough things externally. That's not the issue. The issue is what's going on with your heart, because what comes out of a person is what defiles you from within coming out of your heart. He says, you want to know your problem? You have a heart problem. You have something wrong in here. And what's interesting about that is that Jesus totally disagrees with the Pharisees and blows them out of the water. But they do agree about one thing. It's that we're all defiled. We're all unclean. Pharisees thought they could manage that with some external activities and wash their hands more, like follow a bunch of rules. Jesus says, no, you have no idea how deep the stain goes. He says, your problem isn't that you're not doing X or Y or Z enough. The problem is you've got a busted heart. He says in verse 20, what's defiling you, what's distancing you from God is what's coming out of you. Then in verse 21, from within, out of the heart of man, come evil thoughts. So Jesus starts with that one, because that's really where it starts, right? Every bad thing we do starts with an evil thought in your mind. What do you entertain in your mind? He says, from out of that comes sexual immorality. That's just a broad junk drawer term for any kind of sexual deviance. He says, you might be playing a religious game, but in your heart, you've got sexual immorality that you coddle, you protect it, you take care of it, you make space for it. He goes on. He says, you have theft, you have murder, adultery. All those things are taking from somebody else, right? He's taking you take somebody's money or their stuff, you take their life, you take their spouse, or you break your marriage vows, take from your spouse. Well, she's not my wife, but she's already on the internet. I mean, she already did it. I might as well watch what she's doing. And you take from people. Jesus is saying that comes from your heart. Jesus says you covet. You want what other people don't have. Often that word is associated with sexual sin. He says you're deceitful. You're not honest with people. You kind of gloss things over to make yourself sound good. He says some of you have sensuality. That means open sexual immorality. You brag about it. You laugh about it. He says you have envy, that you look at somebody else's possessions and you want them. He says you have slander. You mock people. You mock people who are made in the image of God. He says you have pride in there. You're arrogant. You want people to think you're awesome. And Jesus says you have foolishness in there. Foolishness means you're morally or spiritually insensitive. It means you're not even seeking to know the heartbeat of God. Russ, that's too much. Like, you're just being nitpicky. And Jesus is saying, no, you need to be honest about the fact that there's something broken inside of you. There is this cesspool, and it's not out there, it's in here. And it may stay in thoughts, but sometimes it spews forth into activity. And you've got to be honest about it. He says, your problem is you're defiled. You're defiled not because of what you've done. You're defiled because of what rises up in here. You're defiled because of the thoughts that you entertain at night. You're defiled. That's hard to hear, right? We don't like to hear that. And what many people do is what the Pharisees did. They know they're defiled. They know they're broken. So they try to come up with a way to cover it over. But becoming a theological expert doesn't make you clean. Working really hard in a Christian organization, but not because you're pursuing Christ, because you're desperately trying to make yourself okay. Being passionate about evangelism is great. Sharing our faith is really important. But if that drive is so you can justify yourself because you know you feel guilty inside, maybe you're chasing Christian service and you push so hard into being busy so you can block out the voices that tell you you're guilty. And some of us, a lot of what we do is because we're trying to outrun that condemnation that we feel is right on our heels, that tells us we're not okay. We feel it. We feel dirty and we can't scrub it out. And now Jesus lays this devastating critique right at our feet. Hey, you're defiled. And it's not stuff from the outside that's done it to you. And it's not stuff on the outside that can fix it. There's something desperately sick in your heart. And that's what's disturbing about the text. That's where he ends. He says there's something desperately sick in you and it's made you dirty and you can't fix you. And he steps away. And that's a really tough place to leave people. But here's the interesting thing about Mark. Mark does this all throughout his writing. He ends these stories from Jesus with these cliffhangers. And he does it so you'll look and you'll say, so what does that mean? Like, I don't get it. What is happening? He does it to bother you. Like, why did he just say that? Why is he doing this? Why would Jesus say that to me? He does it to make you think, well, what am I supposed to do? You're telling me I'm defiled. You're telling me I'm dirty. You're telling me I can't fix me. What am I supposed to do? How am I supposed to fix it? Well, Mark gives us a little sentence to help us understand it. And it's one that we probably don't even think much about if you've read it. We put it in parentheses. And it's that statement in verse 19 where Jesus says, what goes in your mouth doesn't matter. And then the parentheses say, thus he declared all foods clean. Thus he declared all foods clean. So earlier, he wasn't saying anything about the law to the Pharisees. I'll take this off here. Oh, now I'm big right in your face. But here, he's changing the law. So he was denying the tradition, but here he changes the law. Mark says what Jesus did is he took the dietary codes, not just in tradition, but in the actual law. And he said, hey, these things about what you're supposed to eat and not, they're not true anymore. I declare all foods clean. You can eat whatever you want. He says to his Jewish disciples, this isn't saying that you should eat Cheetos and Three Musketeers all day and you're fine. What he's saying to them is, in fact, what Jesus said later was, I have not come to abolish the law. I didn't come to just do away with the law. So what is he doing? He's looking at the Old Testament and saying these dietary codes, all these laws from God that were meant to be symbols of purity, he said, you don't have to do them anymore. Eat shellfish if you want. Why would he say that? Well, he said, I didn't come to abolish the law. I came to fulfill it. I came to fulfill it because you and I aren't okay before God. We're defiled. We can't fix us. And the law condemns us. The whole reason for the law in the Old Testament was so that no one would be able to stand up and say, I am okay before God, because no one could keep the whole law. And Jesus in this little statement says, hey, I'm not here to do away with the law. I'm here to fulfill it on your behalf. And there's a really cool picture of this in the book of Zechariah, and I'll show it to you. Just a minute. Zechariah was one of the prophets in the Old Testament. And so really cool here. So the prophet Zechariah gets a vision. He sees Joshua, the high priest, standing before the angel of the Lord. And the high priest, if you don't know who that was, he was the picture of the whole Jewish system of seeking atonement, like to be clean before God. So Zechariah sees this image of the high priest, so the guy that would go to God on behalf of the people to sacrifice so that the people could be declared clean and okay with God. So to be the high priest, I won't take you all the way through it, but that there was one day that was called the Day of Atonement. And the high priest would go before the presence of God to atone for all of the people. And what would happen to him, he'd be sequestered for a week. He would be ritually bathed. He'd get fine linen, like white and clean, put on him. You'd sacrifice on your own behalf and then wash again, and then sacrifice for the people. And you went all through all those stages and all those rituals to show God that you were clean, to try to get clean, to be ceremonial clean, to walk before God so that you wouldn't die and that you could atone for other people's sins. So that was the job of the priest. So Zechariah has a vision, and he sees Joshua, the high priest, standing before the Lord. And he says, and I saw Satan accusing him. You say, why is Satan accusing you? Verse 3. Joshua was standing before the angel of the Lord, and he was clothed in filthy garments. So what was shocking about that vision is the priest would wash a bunch of times and then put on fine linen, white and clean, before the presence of God. And Zechariah here is saying, I saw the high priest in the presence of God. And again, it's adorably stated. The ESV says he's in filthy garments, but the actual translation is he's in garments covered in excrement. Like they picked the most vile, defiling outfit he could have on. Like you are just covered in it. And if you're a Jew and you're reading this, you're like, how did he even get, like, how would that even happen? And the idea you're getting from Zechariah is this is a vision of how God sees his people. Like the most clean we can get ourselves when we wash is filthy. Filthy. And if what we were talking about before, maybe you feel this. If you're honest, you say, man, when I go into the presence of God, I feel filthy. And Satan stands and accuses me, and you hear that voice. But then something shocking happens in the vision. In verse 4, the angel said to those who were standing before him, remove the filthy garments from him. And to him he said, behold, I have taken your iniquity away from you, and I will clothe you with pure vestments. So he's before God. He's filthy. By the law, he deserves to die. And God says, I've got a better idea. I'm going to come, and you don't clean you, I'll clean you. I'll take your filthy garments off you. I'll remove your iniquity, your sin from you. I'll clothe you with pure vestments. Verse 5, I'll put a turban on your head, which is a sign of honor. And then it closes with God saying in verse 8, hear now, O Joshua the high priest, you and your friends who sit before you, for they are men who are assigned. Behold, I will bring my servant, the branch. For behold, on the stone I have set before Joshua, on a single stone with 7 eyes, I will engrave its inscription. I will remove the iniquity of this land in a single day. Remember that. So he says to Joshua the high priest, this isn't just for you, Joshua. This isn't just for the people who are alive today. He says, this is a symbol for everybody. This is a symbol of the day where I will send my branch. What does that mean? If you remember from our study from David, in Jeremiah, when God's people were broken and in slavery, God said, I'll send a branch from the tree of Jesse, from the branch of David, I'll send the Messiah, and he will be the one to save his people. And here he says, I will send the Messiah, and he will atone for you in a day. And that was shocking, because the Jews would come year after year after year sacrificing animals, but it was never done. The minute you got done with Day of Atonement, you start racking up the sin again, and you know you have to wait till that next year to be clean. And he's saying, one day will come my branch, and he will take care of all sin in one day. And he said, you're a picture of it, priest Joshua, or Yeshua. That's what the word Joshua means. It's also what the word Jesus means. In Hebrew, Aramaic, Greek, all the same word, Yeshua. And he says, high priest Yeshua, you're a picture of another Yeshua who's coming. He will be a high priest, and he will come and not just take care of the sins of the people for a year, trying to cover it up with cleanliness. He will come and he will remove your defilement from you. How did he do it? How did Jesus fulfill the law? He put our sin, our shame, our defilement, our filthiness on himself. He who knew no sin became sin for us. He who was totally pure became filthy for us so that we could be robed in fine linen, white and clean. And Zechariah was a picture of the day when Jesus would come, when he would come and remove our defilement, when he would make us clean. So you say, Russ, what do I do? I'm filthy, I'm dirty. You don't try to fix you. You don't come up with a plan of all this stuff you'll do to make God impressed with you. You come honest, you come open, and you say, God, this is what's living in my heart. I am broken. On bad days, this comes spewing right out of me. This is it. I'm not going to hide it. I'm not going to cover it. I'm not going to try to impress you either. I'm going to come empty, and I'm going to trust that you have a solution. And it's not me trying to impress you. It's you coming to save me. Christianity is about a rescuer, Yeshua, who comes to take your defilement from you and make you clean. And that's where we put our hope. That's why we worship on Sundays, because we don't have to be covered in shame, not because we can earn our way out, but because somebody else has fulfilled the law for us. And his name is Jesus. And that's Mark. Why do we go over these things? So again, I want to be able to encourage you. I want to give you a reminder of why we do what we do, why worship is so important, why the lives that we live are so important, why the way we treat each other is so important, because God moved heaven and earth to send a rescuer for us. And Jesus endured everything that we should have, lived the life that we couldn't, died the death that we deserved, and rose from the grave victorious over death, hell, and the grave, so that we could walk in freedom, so that we could be rescued, so that we didn't have to be tied down by our guilt and our shame, and knowing that nothing we could ever do would be enough. We are enough because he was enough. And we get to stand before God, not with our heads bowed, not in shame, but saying, God, I am part of your family. I've been adopted into your family. I've been rescued. I've been saved because of the work of Jesus. And that should make us want to say, you know what, if there's somebody that doesn't know Jesus, there's somebody that needs rescue, that needs hope, that needs a savior, then I want to be the one to show them Jesus by my words, by the way that I live, by the way that I treat the people around me, by the way especially that I treat the people that don't treat me very well. We get a chance to show people Jesus. So I want to encourage you. I want you to be able to explain this to other people. We need to be ready to have an answer for the hope that is in us. When people ask us about this, when people read a passage like this and are like, what in the world does this mean? It means everything. This is why we do what we do. So I appreciate y'all. Hope you're excited about the rest of the Mark series. We're talking about the feeding of the 5,000 this week. It's such a great story and an exciting story. And so Sunday we will be there. And let me show you a couple of things. I promised you fun, right? We learn, then we have fun together. Things that people have forgotten about. Happy Meal toys, big deal. I can't say that I was a huge fan of the Muppet Babies, but whoever wrote this said they were truly the greatest Happy Meal toys ever made. I started collecting them again a couple weeks ago because they have Super Mario and all the Mario toys. And then I just cannot commit to eating McDonald's that much because AJ has no sympathy for me. It's not good for me. There's actually a lot. They're very expensive now. And it just wasn't worth having all this toys. Like the last thing I need is another collection of things. So no Happy Meals for me. I gave all the toys that I collected to my nieces and they loved them. So another giveaway from McDonald's, the book, Muppet Babies, good stuff. Apparently there were 900 numbers that you could call to talk to He-Man and She-Ra. Too old for Happy Meals. I don't know what to tell you. If they start giving bobbleheads away, I will eat them. So again, I always thought, I've never called the 900 number, but I always thought they were bad. But I guess this is no good either because you're paying to talk to He-Man. We Are the World. Apparently most families own that. Smurf Chef Boyardee pasta, which was basically the same thing as Chef Boyardee pasta. Thank you, Helen. See? Happy Meals are delicious. Judy Blume books. You might remember these. Tales of a Fourth Grade Nothing. Super Fudge. Yep. Good times. Dennis the Menace cartoon. The Snorks. I can't say that I ever watched that. I didn't watch a lot of cartoons growing up, so Can't say that I was involved in the snorks. Disney Pops, pure sugar, fruit concentrate. Good times. Love Judy Bloom. I do remember this door that weighed more than the entire car that we drive now. These things were super heavy. A lot of people got hurt by those doors. Remember when McDonald's looked like that? The slides at the play place. I think I've seen some of these before in one of our lists. Vacuum cleaners that weighed 75 pounds. Yes. Just walking down. Oh, trading cards for almost every TV show. These are coming back around. If for some reason you saved a bunch of these and didn't open the packs, which not a lot of people didn't open the packs, but they're worth a decent amount of money now. If you find those in your basement. Max Headroom, you remember him? Very weird. The peanut butter solution. I have, ew, that looks gross. Okay. I don't know if anybody had the King Kong's underwear joke book. This was before dad jokes. This was the first thing. Fireball Island. Very cool game back in the day. L'Oreal. Cool products. Now we have Senegence, thanks to Megan. Yeah. Weird artwork in the bathroom. Well, there's a cat on there, so I guess it's not super weird. Deco style swans. Yes, all these things. Out of This World, which was apparently a show. Did not watch that. Mysteries of the Unknown. This Pyrex casserole dish. Yeah. My mom had that. She might still have it. The huge photo frames that you're just one cattail away from breaking. Halogen floor lamps. Love these things. I actually still have one of these, but if you try to touch the top of it, it gets very warm. They make them a little bit better now. Highway Patrolman that lit up. It's very cool. Oh, remember Minute Maid Concentrate? Yes. That's how we used to drink our orange juice, people. Air poppers for popcorn. Yeah. Good stuff. Pick up a cheap souvenir book from a place you visited. I can tell you that that's, yeah, Mom still has Corningware. Yeah, I don't know, Hanna-Barbera cartoons. Being curious about what film they were going to show during the NBC Monday Night Movie. Cartoon Erasers. Oh yeah, those were crowd pleasers. Can't say that I had those, but McDonald's had a clothing line at Sears. Don't remember that. Backpacks with clocks on it. Oh yeah, that's great. Helen has the Corningware. Nice. TV's bloopers and practical jokes. Yeah, this was the Fisher Price camera that actually worked and had a flash with it. Teddy bear pencil toppers, and then Perfect Strangers. Never saw that, but I guess some people liked it. Yeah, some of these are before my time as well. So just a little walk down memory lane. Nice. Kristen had the camera. Awesome. All right. We are thankful for today. Thankful for technology. We couldn't have done this 30 years ago. So very cool. Hope you all are staying nice and warm in your homes. We are praying for you. Let me know if I can do anything for you between now and Sunday. If not, I will see you 10 o'clock on Sunday morning. Take care. Have a good night.